Have you ever felt lonely? I don't mean the kind of lonely where you are sitting in an empty room by yourself, reading a book or watching the rain. That kind of silence is peaceful. That kind of silence makes sense. No, I am talking about the most dangerous kind of loneliness in the world. The loneliness that suffocates you when you are standing in a room surrounded by 33 people who share your blood. The loneliness that hits you when you are standing in your own house, the house you grew up in, and you realize with a sinking heart that you are a ghost. You are invisible. Let me take you back to last Saturday. My mother organized a family reunion dinner. 33 relatives were invited. Uncles, aunts, cousins from out of town, even distant relatives we hadn't seen in years. It was supposed to be a celebration of connection, a night of laughter and memories. But for me, it was a masterclass in how to erase a human being. This is the story of how I served 33 people, and not a single one of them, including the woman who gave birth to me, asked if I had a place to sit. To understand the dinner, you have to understand the 48 hours that came before it. You see, my mother didn't hire caterers. She didn't hire cleaners. Why would she? She has me. For 2 days, I was her right hand. Actually, that gives me too much credit. A right hand is a partner. I was her tool. I was her staff. Move that sofa to the wall, she commanded, not looking me in the eye. Cut the onions thinner, nobody likes chunks in the sauce. Why is the carpet in the hallway not vacuumed yet? Ran around that house until my feet throbbed. I scrubbed bathrooms until my hands smelled like bleach. And I did it without complaint. Do you know why? Because there is a stupid, broken part of me, the inner child that never really grows up, that thought, if I work hard enough, if I make this dinner perfect for her, maybe tonight, in front of everyone, she will acknowledge me. Maybe she will say, my child did a great job. 4 hours before the guests arrived, I asked a simple question. I was counting the chairs in the dining room. I realized the math didn't add up. I walked into the kitchen where she was tasting the curry and said, Mom, I counted the chairs. We have 33 guests coming, but with me and you, that's 35. We are short on space. She didn't even look up from the stove. She just waved her hand dismissively and said, don't worry about yourself. Just make sure your Uncle Raj has the comfortable chair because his back hurts. And make sure the cousins sit together. You can figure something out later. We don't have space for clutter. Clutter. She didn't call me Clutter directly. But she didn't have to. The implication hung in the air like smoke. I was the variable that didn't fit in her perfect equation. You can figure something out later is code for you don't matter. But I swallowed my pride. I went to the garage and found an old folding stool, hiding it in the corner of the kitchen, just in case. Then, the doorbell rang. The energy in the house shifted instantly. My mother transformed. It was like watching an actress step onto a Broadway stage. She fixed her hair, put on a bright, radiant smile, and opened the door. Oh, look how big you've gotten, she squealed, hugging a niece she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Come in, come in. My house is your house. She was warm. She was inviting. She was the perfect matriarch. I stood by the hallway entrance, holding a tray of welcome drinks. I was wearing my best clothes. I had groomed myself, trying to look like part of the family, trying to look like I belonged. But as the guests flooded in, a strange psychological phenomenon took over. People take their cues from the leader. If the host treats the dog like a king, the guests will pet the dog. If the host treats her child like a waiter, the guests will hand them their empty glasses. And that is exactly what happened. My cousin, who is 3 years younger than me, walked past me. He didn't make eye contact. He didn't smile. He simply extended his arm and handed me his wet umbrella. "Put this somewhere dry," he said, looking past me toward the food. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how I was. He saw me holding a tray. He saw my mother barking orders at me to hurry up with the juice, and he did the math. To him, I wasn't family. I was the help. I took the umbrella. My hands were shaking slightly. I walked to the coat rack, feeling a lump form in my throat. I told myself to stop being sensitive. I told myself they were just hungry, just tired. But then came the dinner. The dining table was a masterpiece. My mother had outdone herself. There were platters of biryani, roasts, salads, and freshly baked breads. The smell was intoxicating. 33 people sat down. The chairs scraped against the wooden floor, a cacophony of noise and excitement. Shoulders rubbed against shoulders. Everyone was squeezing in, laughing, passing plates. I stood near the sideboard, holding a water jug, waiting for the shuffling to stop so I could find my spot. I looked at the table. It was full. Literally, physically full. There was no gap. There was no plate set for me. I caught my mother's eye across the room. She was laughing at a joke my uncle made, her head thrown back in delight. Then, her eyes landed on me standing there. For a split second, I thought she would realize. I thought she would say, "Oh my God, bring a chair. Everyone scoot over, let's make room." I waited for it. I prayed for it. But she didn't. Instead, her face went blank. She looked at the water jug in my hand, then looked at her sister-in-law's half-empty glass. She mouthed one word to me, "Refill." She didn't notice I wasn't sitting. She didn't care that I wasn't eating. Her only concern was that the service was lagging. So, I did what I was trained to do. I refilled the jug. I walked around the table, pouring water, dodging elbows, muttering "excuse me" to people who didn't even turn their heads to acknowledge me. I heard snippets of conversation. "This chicken is amazing, Shazia. You outdid yourself. Your children are so lucky to have a mother who cooks like this." Lucky. That word echoed in my head as I walked back into the kitchen. The kitchen was a disaster zone. Piles of dirty pots, vegetable peels on the counter, steam filling the air. It was hot and lonely. I put the water jug down. I looked at the food left on the stove, the scrapings at the bottom of the pots. I took a paper plate, because all the ceramic ones were out on the table. I scooped up some lukewarm rice and a piece of burnt potato that hadn't made it to the serving platter. I ate standing up, leaning over the sink so I wouldn't drop crumbs on the floor I had just mopped. Have you ever eaten dinner standing over a sink while listening to your family laugh in the next room? It tastes like ash. It tastes like betrayal. The door between the kitchen and the dining room was open. They could see me if they just turned their heads. But nobody turned their heads. Because to them, I wasn't invisible because I was hiding. I was invisible because I was irrelevant. I stood there for 20 minutes, listening to the clinking of silverware. I listened to my mother telling stories about my childhood, funny stories, embarrassing stories, using my life as entertainment for her guests, while the actual person from the stories stood alone in the dark, swallowing dry rice. It was a surreal form of theft. She was using the idea of me to look like a good mother, while actively neglecting the reality of me. When the dinner ended, the exodus began. People started moving to the living room for tea. And guess who was expected to clear the table? "Just quickly clear these plates," my mother whispered to me as she walked past, "so we can serve the dessert." She didn't ask if I had eaten yet. She didn't look at my paper plate in the trash. She just needed the stage cleared for the next act. So I cleared the plates. I scraped the leftovers. I loaded the dishwasher. And as I was scraping the bones off my cousin's plate, I heard my aunt in the other room ask, "Where is my name? I haven't barely seen them all night." I froze. My heart hammered in my chest. Finally, someone noticed. I waited for my mother's answer. I wanted to hear what she would say. Would she admit she kept me working? Would she apologize? "Oh, you know how they are," my mother's voice floated in from the living room, casual and light. "They are so antisocial. They prefer being on their phone in their room. I try to get them to join in, but they just like their privacy." I dropped the fork I was holding. It clattered loudly into the sink. She didn't just ignore me. She rewrote the narrative. She painted me as the villain, the rude child who rejected the family, to cover up the fact that she had treated me like a servant. She took my pain, my exclusion, and turned it into a character flaw to explain my absence. It was brilliant. It was evil. And it broke the last string of attachment I had. That night, after the last guest left at 1 a.m., the house was finally quiet. My mother was sitting on the sofa, counting the cash gifts the relatives had given. She looked up at me as I dragged the final bag of trash to the door. She didn't say thank you. She looked at the trash bag and said, "Make sure the lid is tight on the bin outside. I don't want raccoons." I looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time in my life, I didn't see my mother. I didn't see the woman I wanted to please. I saw a stranger. I saw a manager who had successfully pulled off an event, and I was just a contractor she didn't have to pay. I realized then that you can be surrounded by blood, you can be in the center of a crowd, and you can still be completely alone. But the worst part wasn't the loneliness. The worst part was realizing that to the one person who should have saved a seat for me, my absence didn't make a difference. My presence was only valued as long as it was useful. And as I walked out into the cold night air to throw away the garbage, I realized something that changed me forever. I don't need to fight for a seat at a table where I am only welcomed as a servant. Next time, I will build my own table. And at my table, no one will ever eat standing up.